Good evening, listeners. You've tuned into Wavecast Radio tonight, and what we are about to report is not something we ever expected to be saying. What we're witnessing across the globe right now is nothing short of a planetary catastrophe. This is no ordinary cold front. This is an unprecedented global freeze, and it's happening right now. In less than 1 hour, the temperature has dropped by as much as 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit across the northern hemisphere. What started as an ordinary cold front in the Arctic has quickly spiraled into something much more dangerous. Cities that were once bustling with life, New York, Tokyo, Moscow, Toronto, are now frozen in time. These cities, known for their global influence and advanced infrastructure, have come to an abrupt halt. People are trapped. Airports are shut down. Planes are grounded. Roads are blocked by thick layers of snow and ice. The power grid has collapsed in most of these areas, leaving entire regions without electricity. In just minutes, cities have gone from dynamic hubs of activity to ice-covered shells. This is no longer just a cold snap. No, this is something much worse. This is the beginning of an extinction-level event. The cold has spread so quickly, moving southward at nearly 100 miles per hour, far faster than any natural weather event or seasonal cold front we've ever seen. And it's not slowing down. It's not just the northern parts of the world feeling the effects. The cold is pushing into temperate zones and even tropical areas. The cities of Buenos Aires, Cape Town, and Sydney, once thought to be safe from the cold's grip, are now beginning to experience extreme freezing temperatures. Areas that had never seen snow are now being blanketed under it. People are confused, terrified, and trapped as the world they knew begins to unravel at a terrifying pace. To give you a sense of the scale, this is not just affecting a handful of cities or a single continent. The cold is worldwide. It's spreading faster than any of our weather models could have predicted, and it's not stopping. You can feel it in the air, everywhere. We're facing something new, something unknown. The scientists are trying to catch up, but the truth is, no one knows what's happening or why. The phenomenon that's causing this freeze is like nothing we've ever seen before. What's happening in the northern hemisphere is just the beginning. The cold is coming, and there's no way of knowing how long it will last, how far it will spread, or when it will end. This could be a global disaster that lasts weeks, months, or even longer. And right now, the most terrifying part is that we don't have answers. One thing is clear: humanity is being tested like never before. Our systems, our societies, the very infrastructure that supports our world, is being brought to its knees in a matter of hours. You may be asking, what could cause such a rapid temperature shift? And, right now, that's the most pressing question on everyone's mind. Some scientists are suggesting that this cold front could be the result of a cosmic event, perhaps a massive celestial body, or particles from space impacting Earth's atmosphere. Others point to volcanic eruptions, or unknown atmospheric phenomena affecting Earth's climate. But no one can say for sure. The sheer speed of the temperature drop doesn't match any natural pattern we're familiar with. What we do know is that the cold is not just an inconvenience, it's dangerous. People are already dying from the extreme cold. Hospitals are overwhelmed with patients suffering from hypothermia, frostbite, and the many other life-threatening conditions brought on by this rapid temperature plunge. We're receiving reports that elderly populations, young children, and people with existing health issues are the first to be hit hardest by the cold. Many of them are trapped in their homes with no heat, no way to escape. This isn't just a disaster for those living in traditionally cold climates. Everyone is impacted. Think about it. Cities like New York, where the average temperature during the winter months rarely dips below freezing, are now facing the kind of cold usually only found in the Arctic Circle. Can you imagine? Ice-covered cars, frozen streets, subways rendered useless by the sheer weight of ice. Power failures are leaving millions of people without light, heat, or access to basic necessities. People are becoming trapped in their homes, unable to leave and unable to get help. Many of us are living in a state of suspense, not knowing when the next wave of freezing temperatures will hit, or if it will ever end. We are being forced to rethink everything we once knew about how the world works. Cities that once represented progress, technology, and control over nature are now at the mercy of nature itself. There is no more certainty, no more assurance that we will wake up tomorrow in the same world we woke up to this morning. The only thing we know is that the world is changing right before our eyes, and we are powerless to stop it. As this cold front spreads, as we see the collapse of everything we know, the question is, how much longer can we survive like this? How long before the world as we know it is irreversibly altered? The cold is relentless, and the worst part is that no one is ready for this. Not the governments, not the emergency services, not us. No one. So, what do we do? How do we adapt? And how do we prepare for a world where the cold is no longer an occasional nuisance or a seasonal annoyance? This may be the new normal. This might be what our world looks like from now on. At this point, we're no longer just surviving a cold snap. We are living through an event that could define the rest of human history. An ice age is not just something we read about in history books. It's something that's happening right now. It's a threat that could last decades, centuries. And as terrifying as that sounds, it's the reality we're facing today. As the hours tick by, what seemed like an isolated event in the Northern Hemisphere has now expanded into a global crisis. What began as a shocking temperature drop across a few cities has now become an international emergency. And let me be clear, this is no longer just about the cold. This is about the collapse of everything we took for granted in the modern world. Across the globe, major cities are coming to a halt. The cold front is moving faster than we could have imagined, faster than any typical weather pattern. It's advancing southward, stretching across the globe with terrifying speed. What was once a problem confined to the north is now reaching the tropics. The places we thought were safe, like Sydney, Buenos Aires, and Cape Town, are feeling the harsh bite of this sudden freeze. This is a global freeze, unlike anything we've ever witnessed. Airports, which once served as the vital links between countries and continents, are now abandoned. Flights have been canceled worldwide. Travelers are stranded, unable to reach their destinations. Some have been stuck in airports for days, unsure when they'll be able to leave. In some places, the airports themselves are frozen, with no power and no ability to provide even basic services. Meanwhile, on the ground, traffic is completely paralyzed. Roads that were once well-traveled, lifelines connecting cities and countries, have been frozen over. Major highways are now impassable, with cars abandoned by drivers who were caught in the cold, unable to move. What was once a day of routine errands and transportation has become a struggle for survival, and power outages are widespread. The electrical grids, designed to withstand many challenges, are failing under the sheer intensity of this cold. In cities like New York, Moscow, and Toronto, thousands of people have already been left without electricity, and there's no telling when it will come back on. For those trapped in their homes, this is more than just an inconvenience. It's a life-threatening emergency. With the power out, people can't heat their homes, keep food from spoiling, or stay warm. Those who rely on electric heating are now exposed to freezing temperatures. Hospitals are being overwhelmed with patients suffering from frostbite, hypothermia, and other cold-related injuries. In some places, emergency services are so overwhelmed that they're no longer able to respond to calls for help. And it's not just a matter of people being stuck. People are dying. Thousands of people are freezing to death in their homes, in cars, and in the streets. The cold has become a global catastrophe, and it's accelerating. And the worst part? No one knows how to stop it. No one knows what caused it. It's as though we've been thrown back in time, to an era where the Earth itself is rebelling against us, the humans who believed we could control it. No one thought it could happen. No one was prepared for it. This cold front, this planetary freeze, is rewriting the rules of how we live. And as it moves forward, it is destroying everything in its path. The question now is not just how long will this last, but how much will it destroy before we have any answers. We are seeing firsthand how fragile our modern systems really are. Transportation, healthcare, and communication systems are all breaking down. Cities that were once symbols of human progress, New York, London, Tokyo, are now frozen in time, paralyzed by the cold, and unable to carry out the basic functions they once did. In some parts of the world, the cold has already caused widespread food shortages. With trains halted, cargo ships stuck, and roads blocked, it's impossible to transport food and goods across the country. Supermarkets have empty shelves. People are starting to panic as they realize there isn't enough food to go around. Cities are struggling to find enough fuel to keep generators running, and those who still have access to basic supplies are hoarding them, adding fuel to the fire of an already escalating human crisis. And communication networks are being completely disrupted. The internet, television, radio, and telephones are all down in some areas. For many people, it feels as though they're cut off from the rest of the world, with no way of reaching out for help or even understanding what's happening next. This communication breakdown is compounding the fear and uncertainty people are already feeling. We're hearing about communities fragmenting. In some places, riots are breaking out. Looting is becoming common in cities where food and resources are scarce. People are doing whatever it takes to survive. There's no longer any sense of social order in many of the affected areas. Civilization, as we've known it, feels like it's falling apart at the seams. What we're experiencing isn't just a cold snap. It's a global freeze. It's more than just a weather event. It's a complete collapse of everything we've built. The systems that have allowed us to thrive, to communicate, to live our lives, are failing. And we have no answers. What happens when society breaks down? How do we survive when every system that held the world together is crumbling? How do we find warmth when the planet is turning against us? How do we hold on when everything is being stripped away? This is the planetary ice age we feared. It is here. And right now, the only thing we can do is hold on tight. Hold on to hope. Hold on to the belief that somehow we'll make it through this. Because the world, as we knew it, is gone. The cold is not just a weather pattern. It's a new reality. And we're going to have to redefine survival as we move forward. The only question is, how much can we endure before the ice consumes us all? As the cold continues to advance, the collapse of infrastructure is becoming impossible to ignore. What started as a cold snap has now turned into a full-scale planetary freeze, and with it, the systems that we rely on to function as a society are being overwhelmed. The truth is, the modern world, as we've known it, is unraveling at a terrifying speed. Let's start with power, one of the most basic, fundamental necessities of modern life. As temperatures plummet, power grids across the globe are failing. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's life-threatening. Entire regions are without electricity and with no heat. People are literally freezing to death in their own homes. In places like New York, London, and Tokyo, High-rise buildings, subways, and hospitals that rely on electricity for heating are now dangerously cold, and no one is coming to fix it. In some cases, emergency power is being used, but it's running out. Generators are failing, and fuel is becoming more and more scarce. People are being forced to ration whatever power they have left, and it's not enough. The cold is simply too much for our infrastructure to withstand. Those who are relying on electric heating are now at the mercy of this extreme cold, and those who don't have any power are struggling to stay warm, using whatever means they can. Blankets, firewood, whatever resources are left. But it's not just the power grid that's failing. Transportation systems are in complete disarray. Airports are closed. Trains and buses aren't running. Cargo ships are stranded at sea, unable to deliver supplies to ports. Roads are completely blocked, with thick layers of snow and ice, rendering highways impassable. Entire regions have shut down. Cities that were once interconnected by a web of transportation are now isolated. The global supply chain is breaking under the weight of this disaster. Food is another critical issue. Cities, once filled with bustling grocery stores and markets, are now empty. Shelves that were once stocked with fresh produce, canned goods, and essential items are now barren, picked clean by people trying to survive. And it's not just that there's a shortage of food, it's that transportation has been disrupted, and the supply chains that brought food into the cities are no longer functioning. And it's not just food that's in short supply. The cold is affecting water supply systems as well. Pipes are freezing and bursting in many areas, and without running water, people are being forced to find other sources of water, which is leading to contamination. The basic infrastructure that we've taken for granted, water, power, transportation, is breaking down. And the worst part is that no one knows when it will stop. As the cold spreads and worsens, the ripple effects on society are becoming even more dire. People are isolated. Neighbors are cut off from each other. Families are trapped in their homes with no way to communicate or get help. Emergency services are overwhelmed, and hospitals are on the brink of collapse. The medical community is fighting a battle on two fronts, dealing with the physical injuries caused by the cold, such as hypothermia and frostbite, while also trying to manage the psychological toll this disaster is having on people. People are freaking out, desperate for answers, desperate for any sense of hope. But there's no easy solution. People are simply trying to survive. And that's the reality we're facing now. Survival. This is no longer about going about our daily lives, commuting to work, or going out for coffee. This is about enduring. This is about how long we can last in the face of a world that's turning cold. And there's no way to know how much longer we can hold on. What we're seeing is the collapse of human civilization as we know it. And what's even more unsettling is that this isn't just a local disaster. This is a planet-wide catastrophe. The cold is not contained to just one region. It is sweeping across the globe, moving southward at an alarming rate. It started in the north, but now even the southern hemisphere is feeling the cold's grip. Buenos Aires, Cape Town, Sydney, they're all facing the same freeze. No part of the world is safe anymore. And the question that keeps getting asked is, how long can we survive this? As the days go on, more and more areas are reporting infrastructure collapse. Water systems are freezing. Electric grids are down. People are being forced to ration food, fuel, and water. And there is no end in sight. And now, with communication networks failing, people are being left in the dark, isolated from the rest of the world. We have no way of knowing how long this will last, or if it will ever end. For those who are still holding on, the mental toll of this disaster is just as significant as the physical toll. People are becoming disoriented, desperate, and afraid. Depression is spreading, and we're hearing reports of people losing hope altogether. They're giving up. The cold has taken everything from them. Their homes, their families, their sense of safety. And now they're trapped in a world where survival is the only thing that matters. But it's not just survival we're fighting for. It's humanity itself. What does it mean to be human in a world that's been frozen in place? How do we maintain our sense of community, our sense of compassion, when everything around us is collapsing? We're witnessing the breakdown of social order, the loss of everything that held us together as a society. Some are already giving in to the chaos, turning on each other, fighting for food and shelter. But others are trying to hold on to their humanity. People are helping each other, sharing whatever warmth and supplies they have left, trying to survive not just physically, but emotionally as well. They know that if we don't stick together, if we don't find a way to survive as a community, then there will be no hope for any of us. This is a fight for survival, but it's also a fight for who we are as a species. What do we want our legacy to be? Do we want to be the generation that gave up, that let the cold take everything from us? Or do we want to be the generation that fought back, that adapted and survived, that found a way to stay human in the face of this disaster? The cold is here. The freeze is happening. And right now, all we can do is hold on to the hope that we can find a way to survive, together. As the cold continues to devastate the planet, we're beginning to see the long-term impacts of this global freeze. One of the most pressing concerns that's quickly escalating is the global food crisis. With transportation systems crippled by the cold, supply chains disrupted, and entire agricultural regions frozen solid, the world is facing a massive shortage of food. For those of us who were lucky enough to visit a supermarket before the cold hit, it may feel like the last glimpse of normalcy, but even that is slipping away fast. Grocery stores that once boasted shelves filled with fresh produce, meat, and canned goods are now nothing more than empty spaces. Food is no longer something we can just buy. It's something we have to fight for. Something that's slipping further out of reach with each passing hour. In the major cities, where frozen roadways and abandoned trains have made it impossible for goods to reach the markets, people are left with scarcity, and desperation is setting in. Looting and hoarding are becoming rampant as families struggle to get their hands on the limited resources left. And with power outages that leave refrigeration systems useless, even the food that remains in stores will spoil quickly. What's left is not just inadequate, it's decaying before our eyes. The freeze has destroyed agriculture on a massive scale. Crops that were in the ground, just weeks away from harvest, are now frozen solid. Entire fields of corn, wheat, and vegetables have been reduced to blocks of ice. Farmers, once the lifeblood of rural economies, are now struggling to keep their land from being completely overrun by the cold. The soil has turned to permafrost, making it impossible to plant or grow anything for months, maybe even years. And it's not just the field crops that are affected. Livestock, cows, pigs, chickens, are also perishing in the freezing temperatures. Dairy farms are struggling to keep their animals alive in freezing barns. Slaughterhouses are either closed or overwhelmed with the sheer number of animals that need to be put down. This isn't just a seasonal freeze that will pass. This is a total collapse of the entire global food system. And it's happening right now. The lack of food is the biggest issue, but the lack of water is quickly following suit. Water systems are freezing, with pipes breaking and water sources drying up. What little clean water remains is being hoarded, and those with access to it are unwilling to share for fear of running out themselves. People are now forced to melt snow for drinking water, but that's not enough to meet the needs of entire populations. With power down and fuel running out, even the basic ability to boil water for sanitation is becoming increasingly difficult. In cities like New York and Toronto, where frozen roads and airport closures are preventing food from getting into the urban centers, it's becoming clear that emergency rations are the only hope for survival. And even then, rationing is becoming a matter of life and death. People are learning quickly that survival now depends on something more than stockpiling supplies. It depends on community. Neighbors are starting to share what little they have left, forming tight-knit groups in the face of the unknown. Some are rationing food to make sure they can make it through the coming days. But even with that, there's no telling how long the food they have left will last. Yet there's a glimmer of hope in all of this. It's in the small acts of survival that we're seeing. People are finding ways to reconnect and rebuild. While the world outside is falling apart, people are coming together to share resources, to build temporary shelters, and to help each other stay alive. We've heard stories of people making do with what they have. Farmers who've lost their fields have turned their homes into greenhouses, growing whatever food they can in the most unusual conditions. Some communities have organized soup kitchens, where the small amount of food that can still be found is shared among those in need. They may be freezing in their homes, but they're doing everything they can to help their neighbors. It's not much, but it's a sign that the human spirit can still endure, even in the face of such overwhelming odds. And perhaps, just perhaps, it's this resilience that will carry us through. If we can come together and work as communities, maybe we can find a way to survive the next phase of this catastrophe. However, it's important to acknowledge that the road ahead is still incredibly uncertain. Global food production is on the brink of collapse. Water is becoming increasingly scarce, and supplies are being stripped away faster than anyone anticipated. If we don't act quickly, this crisis will not just be a temporary event. It will reshape humanity for generations to come. We are facing the collapse of food systems that have supported human civilization for thousands of years, and there's no easy fix. The real question is, can we adapt fast enough to avoid a mass extinction? The answer is unclear, and as the freeze continues to spread, it's becoming harder to see a way out. One thing is for certain, this is no longer a local disaster. This is a global freeze, a freeze that's affecting every corner of the Earth, from the polar ice caps to temperate zones, from northern cities to southern cities. And it's showing no signs of stopping. The cold is relentless, and with it, we face the loss of everything we once knew. Food, water, power, all things we took for granted, are now luxuries we have to fight for. And as we fight, we are reminded that survival is no longer about resources alone. It's about community, resilience, and hope in the face of an unrelenting cold that threatens to wipe us out. But there is still hope. The world is changing. But the question is, can we change with it? Will we find ways to survive, to adapt, and to rebuild from the ashes of our old way of life? It's hard to say, but one thing is clear. The future depends on us. As we move further into the depths of this unprecedented global freeze, the human toll is becoming clearer and more devastating with each passing moment. The medical crisis is rapidly escalating, and it's not just about the physical injuries that come with extreme cold. No, the real crisis is one that goes far deeper. It's about mental health, despair, and the fundamental survival instincts that are pushing us to the edge. The situation in the hospitals is dire. In cities across the globe, emergency services have been overwhelmed. Hospitals are filled with patients suffering from hypothermia, frostbite, and a range of other cold-induced injuries. But that's not the worst of it. What's really concerning is that we've reached a point where medical facilities can't even handle the normal volume of care they once did, let alone the massive surge of cold-related cases. Staff members are working around the clock, but resources are quickly running out. Medications, bandages, and even basic medical supplies are being depleted at an alarming rate. But it's not just the physical toll on the body that's overwhelming us. It's the psychological impact that's beginning to take a deadly toll on communities. For every person battling the cold, there's someone else battling the emotional and psychological strain of this endless freeze. And this strain is already leading to suicide and mental health breakdowns in cities that were once thriving. In places where the cold is taking hold, isolation is setting in. People are trapped in their homes, cut off from loved ones, with no way of reaching out for help. In the early hours of this catastrophe, many of us were still hopeful that we could survive this freeze. But as the cold grows stronger, as power grids fail and essential supplies run out, people are beginning to lose hope. The psychological toll is not just affecting the elderly, but people of all ages. We're hearing about families breaking apart as desperation and fear tear them apart. Parents unable to care for their children, and children afraid of being abandoned in the cold. The warmth of human connection is being shattered as the cold infiltrates every aspect of life. We've heard reports of mass suicides in certain cities where people simply couldn't take it anymore. The fear of the cold, the hopelessness of being trapped in a frozen world without any escape, it's breaking people. We're witnessing the collapse of the human spirit, just as much as the collapse of our infrastructure. And it's not just individuals that are struggling. Entire communities are being torn apart. As the cold spreads and resources become more scarce, neighborhoods that once supported each other are now fracturing. We're hearing reports of looting, violence, and people doing anything they can to survive. What was once social cohesion has become survival of the fittest. When people are trapped in their homes, isolated, with no way to communicate, fear takes over. They start to hoard resources. Trust dissolves. People turn against their neighbors, and the social contract, the very fabric that holds society together, begins to break down. We've seen this happen before in times of disaster, but this time it's worse. People are losing their ability to connect with others, to rely on each other for help. The cold is creating emotional barriers, even as it physically isolates us from one another. Neighbors who once shared meals and resources are now fending for themselves. The human cost of this freeze isn't just measured in bodies lost to hypothermia. It's measured in the emotional breakdown of a society that is beginning to tear itself apart. But perhaps the most heart-wrenching aspect of all of this is the fact that we have no idea how long this will last. How long will this apocalypse continue? Days? Weeks? Months? For people who are already suffering, the question of how much longer they can endure is becoming more pressing. The cold is relentless, and there are no signs that it will slow down anytime soon. People are freezing in their homes, in their cars, and on the streets. Families are torn apart by the cold and the fear of starvation. The very essence of humanity is being tested by the harshest cold the planet has ever known. But we must remember, survival is not just about enduring physically. It's about holding on to what makes us human. It's about resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity. It's about finding strength when there seems to be none left. There are still people who are banding together, offering support to their neighbors, and making sure that no one is left behind. There are still small acts of kindness, even in the face of the coldest, most inhumane circumstances. We hear stories of families sharing warmth, even if it means sacrificing their own comfort. Shelters are being set up, and communities are organizing to help distribute the little food and water that's still available. In the midst of this crisis, we are witnessing the emergence of a new form of survival, one that doesn't rely on individual strength alone, but on collective resilience. We're seeing the human spirit fighting back, even against the overwhelming force of the cold. It's a fight for survival, but it's also a fight to stay human. But as the days drag on, and the cold refuses to let up, we face a difficult truth. We are on our own. The government has already proven unable to help. Emergency services are overwhelmed. The world has fallen into chaos, and we are left to navigate the frigid landscape alone, relying on our own strength, our own will to survive. There's no turning back from this. Civilization as we knew it is already gone, and the question is no longer how to save it, but how we, as human beings, can adapt, survive, and rebuild in a world frozen over. The cold will test everything we've ever known about what it means to be human. But it's the choices we make now, how we treat one another, how we hold on to hope, that will determine whether we survive this nightmare. The world has changed, and now it's up to us to change with it. The survival of the human race, the survival of our humanity, depends on the strength we find in each other. And that's what will see us through. As we move further into the collapse of the world we once knew, we are beginning to witness the breakdown of the very fabric of society. The cold, relentless, and unforgiving has transformed not only the physical landscape, but the moral and social landscape as well. As temperatures continue to plummet, the foundation of modern civilization is crumbling, brick by brick, law by law, and with it, the very structures that held our communities together. One of the most terrifying developments we are seeing in real time is the collapse of law and order. In cities where emergency services and law enforcement have always been a dependable presence, chaos is now taking hold. Police forces, once equipped to handle natural disasters, are now overwhelmed by the sheer scale of this crisis. Entire police precincts have gone silent, unable to respond to the increasing number of calls for help. As law enforcement fails, the social order begins to disintegrate, and the streets become battlegrounds. Looting has become rampant. In many places, people are no longer able to purchase basic necessities. They are taking them. Stores, supermarkets, and even pharmacies have been looted as desperate individuals fight for food, medicine, and warmth. People who would have once been strangers are now fighting each other for the last remaining supplies. In some areas, the riot police are no longer able to control the chaos. Neighborhoods once filled with trust and community spirit have become dangerous territories, where survival is all that matters. What's perhaps more disturbing than the violence in the streets is the shift in mindset. As society collapses, the human instinct for survival is taking over, and in many cases, it's leading people to make choices they never would have before. Morality is being pushed aside, and self-preservation is now the guiding force. The social contract that once kept us bound together is slowly eroding as people retreat into their primal instincts. In cities where the power has been out for days, where roads are frozen solid, and where food is running out, we're seeing people turn on one another. Neighbors are no longer looking out for each other. Instead, they are hoarding what little they have left, closing their doors and windows, and protecting their families from the growing violence outside. Communities that once thrived on cooperation and trust are now divided. People are no longer sharing resources. They are fighting for their lives, and in some cases, that means taking what others have. For those of us still listening, it's hard to imagine how we ended up here. Just days ago, we were living in a world that was stable and predictable. Modern civilization, the cities, the governments, the laws, seemed like unshakable institutions. But now, all of that is crumbling in the face of an uncontrollable natural disaster. The systems we relied on have failed, and in their absence, the rules of society have started to disappear. What was once civilized is now becoming wild. A jungle where only the fittest, the most resourceful, and the most ruthless will survive. It's a hard truth to swallow, but humanity is proving just how fragile it really is. We are seeing the collapse of everything we once believed was permanent. The power grids, the transportation systems, the healthcare systems. But the breakdown of social order is perhaps the most profound and most unsettling of all. Without the protections and structures that once kept us from descending into anarchy, people are reverting to the most basic of instincts: survival at all costs. This collapse isn't just limited to large cities. It's spreading across the globe. Even smaller towns, once quiet and peaceful, are now experiencing the same struggles. In rural areas, people are becoming more isolated and self-reliant. Without communication or the ability to travel, they are turning inward, focused on securing their own survival. Where once there were communities that helped each other, now there are isolated groups, self-sufficient but alone. The concept of shared responsibility is being replaced by an individualistic survivalism. And then there's the matter of the military. Some reports suggest that the armed forces have been deployed to maintain order, but their resources are just as limited as anyone else's. Supplies are running out, and their ability to enforce the law is becoming weaker by the hour. It seems that even the military can only hold back the tide for so long. In many cases, military personnel themselves are forced to abandon their posts in order to protect their own families. And in some regions, the military has even been seen looting and taking whatever they can in order to survive. What happens when even the military, the very force that was once meant to protect, becomes part of the problem? The impact of all this on the mental health of the population cannot be overstated. As the social order breaks down and people turn to violence and survivalism, the psychological toll is already being felt. Depression is becoming widespread as people are losing everything they once knew. Fear, anger, and anxiety are now the emotions that dominate. People are terrified of the unknown. They are afraid of what comes next, and they are afraid of their neighbors. With no communication, no certainty, and no way of knowing when or if things will get better, people are becoming disillusioned. And then there's the deep isolation many are feeling. The cold is keeping people trapped in their homes, cut off from each other, with no ability to reach out for help. Families are torn apart, and friendships are strained. The social isolation that accompanies a disaster of this magnitude is having devastating effects on people's mental well-being. Suicides are increasing. Psychological breakdowns are happening in cities where the cold has taken its harshest toll. For those who are managing to hold on, there's a gnawing sense of hopelessness. Survival is no longer something to be taken for granted. Each day is a struggle to maintain the little piece of normality people have left. Fear grips their hearts, and they wonder how long they can last before they too are swept away by the unrelenting cold. In some places, counseling services are being set up to help people cope. But with infrastructure collapse, there's only so much they can do. As we continue to face this unprecedented disaster, one thing is clear. We are all fighting for survival. It's not just the cold that's taking its toll. It's the mental and emotional cost of being trapped in a frozen world where social bonds are being replaced by self-preservation. Humanity is being tested on every level, physically, emotionally, and morally. We must find a way to hold on to what makes us human, our ability to connect, to care, and to survive together. But the longer this disaster goes on, the harder it will be to maintain any semblance of compassion or social order. The cold is stripping us of everything, and in the face of this destruction, we must hold fast to our humanity. The question now is, how much longer can we endure? As we continue to face the unrelenting cold, We are entering a phase of this catastrophe that will define the future of humanity. The struggle for resources. Everything that was once abundant, from food and water to fuel and medicine, has become a scarcity. The most basic necessities we once took for granted are now luxuries, and as the cold spreads further, people are being forced into survival mode. Communities are no longer functioning in the way they once did. The infrastructure that supported us, our cities, our transportation systems, our food distribution networks, has all but collapsed. And now, we're left to fight for whatever is left. The situation has become desperate. In cities like New York, Toronto, and Moscow, food supplies have dwindled to almost nothing. Supermarkets have been emptied out in a matter of hours. The few remaining cans of food, bottles of water, and packets of medicine are being hoarded by individuals, and the desperation is only growing. People who once trusted their neighbors are now distrusting everyone around them. The act of survival has become an act of self-preservation, and as the cold continues to grip the planet, humanity's survival instincts are being pushed to their limits. What we're seeing now is more than just economic collapse. This is a social collapse as well. As resources become scarcer, the dynamics of human interaction are changing. People are no longer sharing, and in some cases, entire neighborhoods have become like fortresses, each family fending for themselves. The concept of community is being eroded, and in its place, we're seeing tribalism. People are afraid of running out of food, afraid of the cold, afraid of what will happen if they can't get their hands on the essentials to survive. Those of us who are still listening, who are still holding on, may feel the weight of this reality, and the questions we are all grappling with become more urgent by the minute. How do we survive when everything we need to stay alive is slipping away? How do we maintain our humanity when we are so desperate to stay alive that we might turn on each other? It's not just food and water that are running out. Fuel is becoming another major issue. In the northern cities, where heating is essential for survival, oil and natural gas are in short supply. Subways, trains, and buses are no longer running. The power plants are barely functioning, and without fuel, it's becoming harder and harder to keep even emergency services operational. The heating systems in high-rise buildings have failed, leaving the most vulnerable populations, those who live in apartments or houses that are reliant on central heating systems, trapped in the cold. The energy crisis is a vicious cycle. Without electricity, we cannot power heating systems, and without fuel, we cannot keep the power plants running. The cold is breaking the energy grid, and once it collapses, it will be impossible to restart it. We are seeing the end of comfort. Once ordinary amenities, electricity, running water, central heating, are now survival tools. Those who are without them are being pushed further and further into desperation. And it's not just cities that are struggling. Rural areas, once the heart of the world's food production, are now facing the same crisis. Crops that were in the ground are now frozen, and the livestock that once sustained these communities are dying off due to the cold. Farmers, who were once the backbone of the world's food system, are now facing complete ruin. With roads impassable and supply chains disrupted, food is no longer being shipped out to those in need. The global food market has collapsed. This global crisis is becoming a fight for survival. But the fight isn't just physical, it's emotional. People are losing hope. They are watching their world crumble around them, and the weight of that can break anyone. The toll this is taking on mental health is staggering. We are seeing suicides, depression, and anxiety skyrocket as people find themselves trapped in an unbearable reality with no escape. But we are also seeing human resilience. Even as the world breaks down around us, people are finding ways to survive. There are reports of communities coming together, working as cooperatives to share whatever resources are left. People are rationing food, sharing warmth, and building makeshift shelters to survive. It's not much, but it's the human spirit, the will to survive in the face of the impossible, that is keeping us going. Despite the desperation and the chaos, some are still finding ways to adapt. Barter systems are being set up, where goods and services are exchanged, instead of relying on money, currency that has now become essentially worthless. People who still have medicine, fuel, and food are trading them for what they need to stay alive. Farming communities are turning to self-sufficiency, growing what little food they can manage in their own backyards or on small plots of land. It's becoming clear that the future of humanity lies in the resilience of communities. People who can band together, who can work as teams, will have the best chance of surviving. But in a world where the cold is not letting up and resources are rapidly running out, even cooperation may not be enough. The questions that are being raised now are profound. What will we do when the cold doesn't stop? When food runs out? When the power fails completely? Can we rebuild from the ashes of a world frozen in time? Or is this the end of civilization, a point of no return, where we are left to fight only for survival, with no hope of rebuilding what we once had? The cold is unrelenting, and as the resources continue to diminish, the reality of this planetary freeze is settling in. The global supply chains are fractured. The systems that once fed the world are now broken. The battle for food, water, fuel, and medicine is just beginning. And if we can't find a way to survive together, we may not survive at all. The struggle is no longer just about surviving the cold. It's about surviving each other, holding on to whatever humanity we have left, and finding a way to keep the flame of hope alive in a world that seems determined to extinguish it. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear. If we are to survive, it will be because we learn to rely on each other. Because together, we are stronger than the cold. As the cold continues to dominate every corner of the planet, we find ourselves at the crossroads of human survival. The worst of this global catastrophe has yet to pass, and while we are surrounded by devastation, it is the human spirit, the willingness to fight, adapt, and persevere. That will determine whether we emerge from this ice age, or whether we become another casualty of a world that has turned against us. There are pockets of hope amid the destruction. Communities are coming together to reorganize and survive, and it's in these moments of adversity that the resilience of humanity shines the brightest. People who have lost everything are still finding ways to help each other, still holding on to that fragile thread of compassion. It's difficult to imagine when the world feels so cold, both literally and metaphorically. But these small acts of kindness and solidarity are the lifelines keeping us tethered to one another. In some of the cities hardest hit by the cold, people have begun forming survival groups, small clusters of families and strangers who have banded together to share resources. These groups are adapting to the changing world around them by creating new systems of exchange, the very fabric of survival in this harsh environment. Without the luxury of money or traditional trade, they've turned to barter, exchanging food, fuel, medicine, and warmth in whatever form they can find. What's remarkable is that these survival groups are not just about resources. In a world where every day is a fight for survival, these groups are about solidarity and emotional survival. People who were once strangers are now bound by the common goal of making it through the next hour, the next day, the next week. The cold is stripping away much of what we've taken for granted, but it is also reminding us of what is truly important: community, cooperation, and resilience. But despite the human resilience we're seeing, the harsh truth is that we are not out of danger yet. Resources are still scarce, and the cold continues to ravage the planet at an alarming pace. Food is still in short supply, and as agriculture remains disrupted, it is becoming increasingly difficult to grow what little we have left. Without access to fertile land, without the ability to plant crops or raise livestock, survival will eventually depend on our ability to adapt to this new reality. Self-sufficiency has become the key to making it through. In some places, we're seeing people turn abandoned buildings into makeshift shelters. Urban farming is becoming a necessity for those living in cities. The frozen streets have forced people to find alternative methods of food production, including growing vegetables in containers, repurposing greenhouses, and using whatever scraps they can find to create small-scale food sources. The ingenuity of people in these dire circumstances is astounding. Technology is being used in creative ways, from solar panels repurposed to power basic devices to heating systems built from scavenged materials. However, surviving the cold is not just about food or warmth. It's also about mental health and how we hold on to our sense of humanity in the face of unimaginable suffering. The psychological toll of this disaster is already immense, and the longer this freeze continues, the more it will push the limits of our ability to cope. But here's where we need to take stock of the true nature of human resilience. It's not just our ability to survive physically that will matter. It's our ability to keep going, to hold on to some semblance of hope when the world seems so bleak. In these pockets of survival, we're seeing the emotional strength of people, holding on to each other, leaning on one another for support, and finding ways to keep their spirits up. Humanity, in its darkest hour, is still finding ways to hold on to connection. Children are being comforted by parents who still find the strength to offer a hug, a smile, or a moment of relief. Even in the midst of despair, there is still love. And that love is helping people endure. Yet, for all the resilience we are witnessing, there are still unanswered questions. As the cold tightens its grip, we are left wondering, how long can we sustain this new normal? How long can we survive without basic necessities? How long can we hold on to hope before we are overwhelmed by the scale of this disaster? The reality is, we don't know. We don't know how long this will last. We don't know if the planetary freeze will ever let up. We don't know if we can rebuild what we've lost. But one thing is certain. Survival depends not just on our physical endurance, but on our mental resilience. The human spirit is powerful. It's not enough to simply survive the cold. We must find a way to endure it. We must find a way to hold on to our humanity, to maintain our compassion, and to come together as communities in the face of this unprecedented crisis. Whether the world eventually thaws or remains frozen forever, the strength of the human spirit may be the only thing that carries us through. In the meantime, we must continue to adapt. We must continue to find ways to survive together, to share what we have, and to find hope even when it feels like the world has been plunged into eternal night. It is in these moments of crisis, when everything is at stake, that the true strength of humanity can shine through. The question is, will we embrace that strength? Will we rise to the challenge of surviving in this new world? Or will we be overcome by the cold? The cold is not just a challenge to our bodies. It's a test of our hearts, our souls, and our ability to endure together. And how we respond, how we adapt, will define what comes next. The world is frozen, but we are still alive. And as long as we are, we must keep moving forward, step by step, hour by hour, holding on to the belief that hope can still exist, even in the darkest of times. We are now witnessing the full extent of the disaster we feared. The cold, which began as a mysterious and sudden drop in temperatures, is now a permanent presence on this planet. What began as a freak event, a massive temperature plunge, has grown into something much more significant. The Earth is no longer simply experiencing a seasonal cold snap or a temporary freeze. What we are facing is the reality of a new ice age, an epoch that may last for centuries, perhaps even millennia. The ice albedo feedback loop, which we first began hearing about in the early stages of this crisis, is now in full swing. As the cold front moves forward, it's leaving behind an Earth that is increasingly reflective, its surface now dominated by ice and snow. The more snow and ice cover the land, the more sunlight is reflected away from the Earth's surface. As more sunlight is reflected, the Earth grows even colder, causing even more ice to form in a never-ending cycle. This self-perpetuating feedback loop is taking the planet toward a future that's frozen and uninhabitable for much of the world's population. The polar ice caps are expanding at a rate that defies the models of climate scientists. In the span of just a few weeks, areas that were once temperate or even tropical are now locked in ice. It's not just the Arctic and Antarctic that are affected. Entire continents are being engulfed in ice. Places that once thrived in moderate climates, Southern Europe, North Africa, Central America, and even parts of Asia, are now experiencing the coldest temperatures on record. We're seeing snow in regions where snow hasn't fallen in centuries. Tropical forests are turning to ice fields. Entire ecosystems that once flourished in warmth and sunlight are now frozen, unable to survive the dramatic temperature shifts. In the northern hemisphere, the cold is advancing relentlessly, stretching from the poles to the equator, leaving behind a frozen wasteland. Cities that were once global powerhouses, New York, London, Moscow, Tokyo, are now frozen in time. What once was life, traffic, commerce, the hum of energy, has been replaced by silence and stillness. People are locked in their homes, unable to escape the cold's grip. Power is out. Roads are impassable. And still, the cold is relentless, continuing its march across the planet with no end in sight. As the cold continues to spread, we're beginning to see the acceleration of this freeze. Scientists are now telling us that the cooling process is faster than they ever predicted. What was once thought to be a slow process, a cooling that might take decades or even centuries, is now happening in a matter of days and weeks. Whole continents are being frozen over, and we're losing ground at an alarming rate. But it's not just the temperature drop that's concerning. Everything is being affected. The planet's ecosystems are unraveling before our eyes. The oceans are becoming colder, causing widespread disruption to marine life. Fish and other sea creatures that once thrived in warm waters are now struggling to survive in an increasingly hostile environment. The forests that once absorbed the Earth's carbon dioxide and provided oxygen to the planet are now dying. The soil itself is becoming frozen, making it impossible to plant crops, while entire agricultural regions are being wiped out. What little fertile land remains is being buried under layers of ice and snow. The food crisis is now reaching unprecedented levels as the global food supply becomes increasingly scarce. We are facing the collapse of ecosystems, biodiversity, and the entire planet's ability to sustain life. And this is just the beginning. We haven't yet fully grasped the long-term consequences of this freezing event. If the planet enters a permanent ice age, we could be looking at centuries of frozen conditions, where humanity's existence will be confined to the small pockets of survivors huddled in isolated refuges. The cities we once relied on for commerce, culture, and community will be nothing more than ice-covered monuments to a time long past. The frozen cities will serve as grim reminders of the world that once was. As the days stretch on and the cold continues to spread, we must ask ourselves, what is the future of humanity in a world where survival is no longer guaranteed? We are no longer in a battle against the elements. We are in a battle against time. If we don't find a way to adapt to this new ice age, we could face the end of human civilization as we know it. The future looks bleak, and the question remains, will we survive? We are reaching the point where we must confront the reality that humanity's ability to shape the world, to control nature, and to survive as we once did, may be gone forever. Our technology, our cities, our global infrastructure, all of it is failing. And without the resources to sustain life, adaptation may be our only chance. Adaptation will not be easy. It will require innovative thinking, cooperation, and the strength to endure not just the physical cold, but the psychological toll of knowing that we are now facing a world we can no longer control. But survival is not impossible. We've seen it before, in the darkest moments of history. We've seen humanity rise from the ashes of disaster, finding a way to rebuild, to survive, and to move forward. But now, the clock is ticking. The cold is unrelenting, and if we cannot adapt soon, we may be witnessing the beginning of the end. The Earth is changing, and humanity is being tested in ways we never imagined. The question is no longer how to survive this cold, but how to survive in this new world, a world where the ice may never leave. Will we endure, or will we be frozen forever in this new ice age? The cold is not just coming for our homes, our cities, or our resources. It's coming for the very heart of civilization. And only time will tell whether we can rise to the challenge. As we stand on the brink of this new world, the questions that linger in the cold air are ones we may never be able to answer. What comes after this? Will we ever see the warmth of the sun again? Or are we trapped in this endless winter, where the ice is not just a force of nature, but the final judge of humanity? The planet we once knew is gone, replaced by a desolate landscape, frozen and unforgiving. It's hard to imagine a time when life was filled with ease, when we had control, when we thrived in the comforts of modern civilization. But now, what we see is not civilization. It's ruin. The cities we once loved, the world we took for granted are frozen, their silence deafening. There are no echoes of bustling streets, no sound of trains racing down tracks, no hum of electricity. There is nothing left but the cold. And with the cold comes the darkness. We are entering an age where death is no longer a distant concept. It's here. It's creeping through the cracks in our homes, wrapping its icy fingers around our throats. The suffering is real. The despair is real. The fear, that primal terror, is real. There is nowhere left to run, no place to escape. This is the new reality we face, and it is a reality that grows colder with every passing minute. What happens when humanity's final hope is buried beneath layers of snow and ice? What happens when we have nothing left to hold on to but the grief of what we've lost? Families torn apart, nations divided, communities scattered and fractured. We are facing the complete collapse of the very systems that held us together. Political systems, economic systems, and even the moral systems we once relied on. But in the deepest cold, there is something even darker waiting to consume us. Isolation. When we lose everything, we lose ourselves. The human spirit can only survive so much before it too succumbs to the freeze, before it too turns to ice. And as the world around us freezes, so too does the heart of humanity. We are losing not only our ability to survive, but our will to fight. People in the most frozen cities have begun to vanish without a trace. No rescue efforts, no hope. There are rumors that some have already given in, decided the cold would win, and they would fade into it. It's not a defeat, it's a surrender, and it's spreading faster than the cold itself. People are breaking. The ice is not just in the world, it's in us. So, what happens when everything is gone? When we have nothing left but despair and the endless freeze? There will be no more future. There will be no rebirth. There will be no new world. The end will come slowly, like the closing of a heavy, ice-laden door. We will stand at the threshold of the eternally frozen world we've built for ourselves. This ice age is not just a period in history. It is the end of history. As we fight for every breath, every second, the cold is swallowing us whole. And we're left with nothing but our frozen bodies, waiting for the final frost to claim us. Can we endure it? Or will we be consumed by it, like so many who have already fallen? The question is no longer if we will survive, but how much of us will remain once the last bit of warmth is gone. We've reached the point of no return. We have crossed into a world where survival is a fleeting thing, where the cold does not just endanger our bodies, it threatens to extinguish our very souls. We may not know what tomorrow holds. We may not know how many of us will be left when the ice finally claims the earth. But we do know this. The world we once knew is gone. The cold will not let us return to the past. And as we look ahead, all we can do is hold on to what little humanity we have left. In the face of this unrelenting freeze, in the face of certain doom, hope is the only thing keeping us alive. But even that, it seems, is beginning to fade. What happens when hope itself freezes? This is our last test. The world has turned cold, and so too have we.